So, what do you? What's the game plan here? Let's say you become congressman. What are you going to do? I think philosophically, a lot of people believe that where the two of you are is pretty close. I think that looking at both of you as moderates. And you know, some people contest that Mike Arcuri has become a moderate to get reelected.
Well, Michael Arcuri has taken a nosedive to the center. He was almost 98% lockstep, marching behind Nancy Pelosi. His record was clearly that, and he has taken a rush to the center because he wants to rebrand himself as this moderate. But my contention is, as soon as he's reelected, if that happens to be, that he will go back where he was and be and you should go to, I think there's a website called PelosiPuppets.com. You can find him there. I believe it was there. And you'll see that how the world views him is different than how he portrays himself. I think that's one of the reasons they defend his seat so well, is because they know that he's the same as 2 votes for her.
Can I get you to, Mark, just turn that mic a little bit for me, just a little bit. Let me ask you, so are you, is that how you describe yourself? You describe yourself as a moderate?
No, I think so, but that's not the difference. But Michael Arcuri and I couldn't be more different. He's a guy who's spent his entire career in government. He has run for office many times. I am a practical person. I have made a living out there, making a payroll, building a business, working in an environment upstate New York which is particularly punitive to businesses. And I have a clear idea of how value is created and opportunity is created and how it's destroyed. And if you look at New York State, you can't help but think, as big as New York is, that the country is going in the same direction, that the growth of government and the success of the private sector are in opposition to one another.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, 80% of our jobs or so are created by the private sector. Our money is much better handled by us than the government.
In terms of policy, how are you different than Mike Arcuri?
Well, I certainly wouldn't have voted for some of the things he's voted for. $1 trillion deficits, a stimulus package, the omnibus bill. He has been an agent of deficits as long as he's been there. And he's a guy who seems to think that every solution comes from government. I'm a guy who doesn't believe that. And there's a lot of evidence to show that government is not nearly as adept as it would like to be. I mean, look at the stimulus package,
right.
$816 billion. And now they're trying to prove a negative, that they didn't create jobs, which they said unemployment would never go over 8.5%.
Right.
Now it's 9.6, and arguably underemployment is 17 to 20. And about 100 million of it went to do those things we know create jobs.
Right.
And I understand Keynesian economics. The rest of it was a government self-stimulus package.
Do you, I mean, the fact, I want to say the fact is, I don't think we know what the facts are, because there's a lot of hypothetical out there. But, you know, we're told that if it wasn't for the stimulus, which really started with George Bush, if it wasn't for that, the teachers would have lost their jobs. Employees would have lost their jobs. Unemployment, we should be happy where unemployment is, because where it would have been without the stimulus, it would have been just record highs that we've never seen since the Depression. Do you buy that? Do you believe that?
What I maintain is that the stimulus was in all likelihood necessary. And that, yes, it's true. A lot of this is George Bush's, the Republican Party's fault. A lot of this residual damage and debt is a function of 2 unfunded wars, unpaid for rather, and what looked like a Republican Party that forgot what it stands for. You know, I know what I stand for. I'm trying to build a future for my children and for other people's children, and I know that you can't be. We run the risk of being the first generation to pass forward much less than we received. I mean, we've spent our parents' money and our money, and now we're borrowing against our children's future, and it's wrong.
So where will you be different? And you get elected, where will you be different?
My background is in business. It's in economics. That's what I studied in college, and that's what I enjoy, and I'm a member of a few different things. So I'm up on the subject, and I enjoy it. It's interesting to me. Where we will differ, and where we do differ, frankly, is Mr. Arcuri doesn't need to have ideas because he sits back and waits for instructions.
Right.
Everybody in Washington knows that. And people up here, if they pay attention, they should know that too. The difference is I bring a lot to the table. I bring a life experience of a guy who really gets it, who struggled and tried to succeed in an environment that's probably one of the worst in the country.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm successful here. And I think that that's something that should be applauded, and I don't expect credit for it, but I do think that it's unfair to characterize success as failure, or as somehow the fact that I've done all this work and made a few dollars in my life and take good care of my family and incidentally my community as best I can,
right.
Is something that should be looked at as, there's a guy who means what he says and has put his money where his words were.
Yeah. Tell me where you stand on the war right now. It looks like Iraq. We're moving. We've moved away from Iraq, and we're moving into Afghanistan.
Right, and I was never in favor of Iraq. I think it was a rush to judgment. It was a war of choice. We're out of there. I'm happy for that. I look at Afghanistan, and I have some deep concerns about Afghanistan. You should remember Mr. Arcuri ran as a guy who was going to get us out of Afghanistan.
Yeah.
He never peeps a word about it. He is constantly doing a weather check to see where he has to be to get more votes and to be reelected. I think Afghanistan, it's a kind of an ongoing thought process for me, but I'm uncomfortable with it. I think I worry about mission creep. I worry about the fact that Afghanistan has been the graveyard of empires for 1,000 years. And the idea that somehow you can change a culture and change a country into something that we recognize as democracy, I think is somewhat misguided. We went there to chase Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, and to protect ourselves and keep that from being a safe haven. I think there may be a better way to do that than trying to run the entire country.
Now, let's talk about the Michael Arcuri came out against the mosque in New York City. You spoke up early, and then it looked like you somewhat changed your opinion. Were you misquoted? What happened in all that?
No, I wasn't misquoted. I wasn't quoted enough. What I have always maintained is that they have, clearly it's a local issue. They have a right to build it there. That I've said that the question isn't about the Muslim community as much as it is the Taliban and our feelings towards the Muslim community and the anger that has ensued from 9/11, and that I thought that the better part of judgment would be for the Muslim community to say, wait a minute, we get this.
Right.
People are upset. They don't want it there, and back away. But the idea that they have a right to build it there is fairly clear. It's a constitutional right.
Sure.
It's unpleasant. I wish they used more prudent judgment in placement. But there are 100 mosques in New York City, and if people speak out and say they don't want it there, I think people involved in building it ought to listen.
It's kind of like you would. There was a lot of stories about the Catholic Church was trying to build something somewhere. I think it was Rudy Giuliani that was talking about this on Meet the Press. And then it became a real issue. There was a sensitive issue based on something that happened in history. And the Catholic Church backed down because they knew it was going to be a negative PR story. It would have been nice if this Iman would have said, I know this is going to be. It's not fair. I mean, we should not be discriminated against because we're Muslim, but we're not going to better our cause if we try to build this thing here. Maybe we make a good gesture and improve things.
Every right has a corresponding obligation, I think. It's not just one way. I have rights to do a great many things in this country. Doesn't mean I'm going to do them or exercise them. So I think prudent judgment would be that they walk away. I think that the Taliban is the enemy, Al-Qaeda is the enemy, and there's another enemy that people talk about, and that is knee-jerk hate, and I worry about that.
Yeah, it seems bad now.
It does.
Yeah.